What's going on, everybody? I'm Jeff from Jeff Needs Sports. That's Steven from Breaking the Game podcast. And this is Setting the Screen, an official Off the Ball Network podcast. Uh, Full disclosure, this is the first episode of it. This is part of our new Off the Ball Network entertainment division. Essentially, it's like this. We all get together and we talk about sports and we love sports and we analyze sports and we dissect sports and we do all that. But the other thing we all share the common understanding, we love movies, we love TV, we love pop culture and all this. So this is kind of an outlet for us over here at Off the Ball Network to talk about something a little different sometimes and have a little fun. So tonight's selection was brought to me by Steven. It was with us tonight, and we're going to do 2000 The Replacements. So Steven, what's up, man?
Hey, Jeff, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited for the Setting the Screen project that you're undergoing. I can't think of a better mind to take on a project like this than you. And I'm just blessed that you wanted to have me on to talk about one of my favorite sports movies ever. I think it's highly underrated. I don't think that it gets nowhere near as much of attention as what it should. And I was born in 1990, so it kind of grew up with this
Oh,
movie, so to speak. And I'm excited to talk about everything under the sun about this movie, man. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, it's great. We're gonna have fun with it. Anybody wants to go back, you can check out Jeff Needs Help. Me and Steven piloted Setting the Screen. We did WandaVision and we
Hmm.
did the Captain America series.
Winter Soldier and Falcon, yeah.
Yeah, Winter Soldier. Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, this is gonna be fun, man. So we're doing we'll go to stats first. So we are sports
Yeah.
podcasters, so everybody will see the thing here. We're going to do the stats. This movie was released in August of 2000. The budget was 50 million. The worldwide gross to this point is 50,054,000 dollars. So
Saved
it
a
was
little money.
it's a profitable movie. I would imagine most of the 50 million went to Hackman and Keanu. The director was Howard, I think it's Howard Deutsch.
Deutsch. Deutsch.
Deutsch. Uh, Crazy. When I didn't realize this when I looked into it. He also directed Pretty in Pink and the Great Outdoors, two colossal '80s movies. So I was surprised. He was still directing as of 2020. The
Wow.
film locations. Most of the football scenes were filmed in Baltimore, the Baltimore Ravens Stadium. Some of the other stuff was filmed at FedEx Field in Washington D.C. And it's rated PG-13. I think sometimes I think this was made for 13-year-old boys, but we'll get into that later. But it's pretty cool. The synopsis. If you haven't seen The Replacements, go check it out. This is a 100% spoiler-filled show, by the way. So
For sure,
if
yeah.
you haven't seen it, you probably could have by now,
You've
or you
had
didn't want.
22 years, right? Like
Yeah,
it's been out for a little bit.
statute of limitations are up. So, synopsis: The Replacements is a 2000 American sports comedy film directed by Howard Deutsch. We think it stars Keanu Reeves, Gene Hackman, Brooke Langdon, Reese
Hyphens?
Ifans, John Favreau, Jack Warden in his last film appearance. He played the
Crazy.
owner's last. Yeah, great career as an actor. The movie was loosely based on the 1987 NFL football strike, specifically the Washington Redskins. They were called the Redskins back
Yeah,
then.
we're
That's
not
it's
holding on to
we
that.
don't support the name, but
No.
I'm also not going to sit here and act like it wasn't their name then. That's on record. Nothing I could do about it. Actually, there's something they could do about it. They changed it. Shout out to Washington,
Yeah.
who won all three of the replacement games that year without any of their regular players, and then they also went on to win the Super Bowl 22 that same year behind the historic game of Doug Williams. So this is a kind of a crazy story in sports history. I'm old enough to remember the strike and people. So this movie, I get more of this movie than just
Mhm.
like probably you would, Steven, because you just didn't live through the strike and didn't get to hear the fans complain and all that. So come at it from a different way there.
Yeah, and
So
I think that a lot of the dialogue that happens in this movie, looking through it, with the lens of where we're at now with sports and like players, like player empowerment and all these different things that have progressed over the years, right, within the world of sports. Looking at a movie 20 years earlier, and just a lot of the dialogue about, how these players are millionaire
Yeah.
babies and they don't love the game and all this other stuff anymore. That really stood out to me kind of in the early going. Is just like, oh, these pampered rich kids that don't,
Yep.
that are afraid to get their jerseys dirty and all this other stuff. I don't think that if this movie were to come out today, that the dialogue would be so heavily focused on, the money being like a root of all evil, so to speak,
Yeah.
um, for in the world of sports right now.
Yeah, no doubt. It was right. This came out, right at the crossroads of this is when salaries were just starting to explode. Stadiums were being built. Football was NFL football this is right about the time they kind of just pushed over baseball and pushed, and just had buried the NHL and even the NBA at some point.
Yeah.
It was set to become the monster that it's grown into today. So, a lot of that hinges on that. So it is weird to watch it in retrospect and be like, because I asked you the question, I'm like, do fans are so anti-athlete now? Like I don't
Yeah.
sometimes I don't understand sports fans because like it feels like they don't like athletes. Like all they do is complain about athletes and all
Mhm.
they do is run on athletes. And all they do is hate on them. And yet the games have never had more viewers, more fans, more money injected into it. So I've never personally quite figured out,
I
what that.
just think I think that sports are becoming like what the news used to be. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like if you look at how, the news, like everyone used to watch the news, right? And um you watch it and it's not always pretty, it's not always fun, it's not always the thing that you want to hear, but it's information that's put out there, and the next day you and your buddies at the water cooler you get to talk about whatever, local anchor talked about in the
hmm,
news, have that discussion. Now it's like the same thing with sports. Like people watch highlights more so than they watch full games now. They don't even watch games. They watch other people
yeah,
talk about sports. Like
yes,
shout out to us, right? Like
yeah.
people watch us talk about sports and then they formulate their opinions based off of whatever information is being put out to them, right? So I think we're kind of like at this moment, right? Like sports is becoming the new news to where you don't even necessarily have to like what's going on, but you're going to tune in just so you can complain about it later, right?
No, no, no. I think that's a great example, and too, have to remember this movie is about the year 2000, but when this strike happened, it you didn't watch every team every week. I've
Mhm.
reiterated that on my show so many times. It what you might if you were say you lived in Los Angeles, you may not actually really know much about who Washington's quarterback is or Tampa Bay's quarterback is. Like your local stuff, so that was kind of different, just a different time. But as
You had
far
to
as
read
people,
a newspaper to get like a game breakdown to be like, hey, this is the things that our team needs to look out for, right?
yeah, well, think about this movie. They make this movie, and there's no Sports Center highlights. There's no NFL Network highlights, which they always interject in sports movies now because
Mhm.
they just hadn't had that weight. I mean, it's got a $50 million budget. It's not like they paid for the soundtrack. I mean, they could have done all this. ESPN's nowhere to be seen
Yeah.
because at that
Well,
point,
they do bring in a couple prominent like sports, like
we
particularly,
will
yeah,
talk
we'll
about
get
that.
in there. But what's crazy to me too, just another thing to point out about at the time of this movie, I found it funny that like some of the broadcasting that happened in this movie, I don't know if you caught which network was broadcasting it, but it was TBS, and I can't remember a time TBS was like
No,
a prominent like sports broadcast
for
outlet.
probably about the time you were born. For a brief minute, TNT for half of a season actually had Thursday night football games.
Well, I'm saying TBS though, right?
Yeah,
Like
well, that would be Turner, still be
yeah,
Turner.
that's still the same
Yeah,
umbrella, right?
TBS.
But
Yeah,
different.
TBS had nothing but the Braves at that point. But there was a time to where it was like Turner had half of the. It was this weird thing where they only played Thursday night games like half the season, and then they split it with TNT because it was such a big deal.
When
And then
TNT had wrestling too, like that, like
yeah,
TNT and like was
I
really big in
didn't pick that. I
broadcasting
didn't pick
wrestling.
up on that though. I figured they would use some fake network or whatever. So
Yeah, TBS was on the little mic. Like you remember how they had the microphones with the big squares like
yeah,
around there where you like advertise whatever broadcasting
yeah,
outlet you are.
I
Like
missed it.
they had TBS on there. I was like, huh,
That's
that's
great.
weird.
So we'll get right before we get to the movie here, what's your memory of this movie? When did Steven latch hold of this movie? Because I know you like it more than most people I know.
Yeah, so it's funny because I just remember watching this as a kid and, growing up with this movie, right? Like it's real slapsticky, like you could almost imagine, and I'm going to talk about this too. You can almost imagine like an Adam Sandler style cast like in a movie like this.
Yeah.
And to me, I know that the original version of The Longest Yard was filmed well before the replacements, but to me, if you look at the cast of this movie, like this was like our generation's version of The Longest Yard. This kind of was like the precursor to that, right? And we'll talk about like the cast and things like that, but a lot of these dudes like in their time were pretty big celebrities,
Hmm.
and you brought them all together to make a football movie, and it wasn't like supposed to highlight like how dynamic or like how important sports are, right? Like it's just a good fun time. And for, at this when the movie was out, I was around 10, 11 years old. It's just like it's the ultimate like young
Yeah.
boys sports movie, right? Like the cheerleaders, hello, right? Like the cheerleaders, there's football, it's funny,
Yeah.
there's music,
Oh,
like
it hits every note.
it's a pop, like it's the old, like it's an epitome of like a pop culture sports movie, right? Like, and growing up with it, it's just been like a foundational piece in like sports, like movie entertainment in
It's
my life. I love it, man.
Oh yeah, you see a movie at a certain time in your life and it stamps on you. I mean, there's all kinds of movies like that. So I come at it a little bit different because I see your point of it because my nephews are about your age and they love it. I
Mhm.
remember we went to see the movie together because we're huge football fans and we see every movie. And I remember thinking like, it was good. I honestly, before last night's watching, hadn't watched this movie in full maybe 3 times. It was just kind of there. I always, of course, I'm a Ohio State fan, so I always, it's a lot of Ohio State. Like, I think they probably could have talked about the Sugar Bowl less because if you're not an Ohio State fan, you may not remember that Ohio State had just come off a drubbing in the Sugar Bowl. Joe Germain got embarrassed. It wasn't pretty. And so,
They
you know,
reference an embarrassing Sugar Bowl memory a
several
lot
a
in
lot
this
of times.
movie.
So fun fact, the reason they used the Sugar Bowl was because the year that they used that he was in the Sugar Bowl, it was 95 Sugar Bowl. They actually didn't have a Sugar Bowl that year. So that way they didn't have any conflicts of like actual footage or any relevance whatsoever. So there actually wasn't a Sugar Bowl in 95. That's why they used 95 Sugar Bowl. It was that simple. It just happened to coincide with a few years later, Ohio State got drubbed, you know, in a Sugar Bowl. And I'll say the most realistic part about this movie is that nobody will forget when Ohio State gets whooped in a bowl game. Like, that will bring it up constantly for the rest of your life. I actually, one of my questions was the discurse Ohio State to get blown out in these bowl games because since 2000 they've several times. Again, you have to be good to get there, but it's
And
just
did it
funny to,
curse Ohio State quarterbacks like from being good
yeah.
professional football players, right? Like there's that underlying theme in there too.
Right. Yeah. And I got a question coming up about that once we get into it. So let's get into the starting lineup here, which is our
Sure.
cast. So we got Keanu Reeves as Shane Falco. So this is Keanu. This is about, I believe it's 7 years after Point Break to where he played another Ohio State quarterback, which was weird. Johnny, a lot of people think that, like, wait a minute, couldn't we have just made him Johnny Utah? Isn't that funny? But so it's Shane Falco. Apparently one of the best quarterbacks in college for Ohio State, gets blown out in this imaginary 95 Sugar Bowl, hurts his knee, crumbles in his first season in the NFL, and now
Mhm.
he's scraping barnacles off boats in the it's supposed to be Washington, so I suppose that would be the Potomac River.
I'm not
Is
gonna
where
pretend like I know the
yeah,
the, the rivers in that area.
yeah.
We need to
So
ask scouts coach about that.
he lives on a houseboat, scrapes other boats. Now, first of all, well, okay, and you probably, I don't know what your history was with Keanu when you see this. Just in general, do you feel that like it worked?
Yeah, so I think this is early 2000s is why when
Mhm.
we're transitioning from Bill and Ted Keanu Reeves, right? Like he's
Yeah.
not just like, "Whoa, dude, I'm playing football. This is cool." Like it's not Bill and Ted Keanu Reeves. Like this is about the time as like, Matrix and stuff like that are starting to
Yeah.
happen, and he's going to be turning his acting career into somewhat more of a serious character, right? And what's more serious in America than football? There's this is a good way for him to kind of get out there. There's more.
A good vehicle for him.
It's a tremendous vehicle for him to be broadcasted throughout a wide range of audience, and just to be like, okay, like he's a hero, he's a heartthrob, he's everything. Like he's, men want to be him, women want to be with him type actor now, right? And this is like him segueing down that avenue. And we'll talk about like all the other things that are going on in this movie with a lot of those, qualities that I just laid out. But it's the beginning of Keanu Reeves like starting to make a name for himself, like as a serious actor. Not and he's obviously still very funny in this movie, right? But there's more, like he's layered. He's a little bit more complicated than what we're used to seeing him in his previous stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. I liked him in the movie. He gained weight for the movie. I thought he looked the part. He looked
like a football player.
He looked enough like Adam Sandler's great. You brought up The Longest Yard, but he's there's no way that you can convince me that Adam Sandler was the best college football player in the country. Keanu, I kind of buy it, especially back then. Like now, he might not. Well, I know he still does now. We'll get into that, but I like
it. Got the California hair, like California quarterbacks are like.
I really think they probably should have went USC. If we're being honest, I don't know why they went Ohio State.
Or UCLA, like some one of those.
He never, as a 2000 Ohio State quarterback, it never made sense to me why he was there. But
at least they didn't put him in the SEC. Like he wouldn't have played SEC football in '95 with hair like that, So
no, good point, good point. And Ohio State's nondescript, like everybody knows the brand, so I guess that was easy. So I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask the producers.
Notre Dame maybe might have been another good.
I think Notre Dame works better. I totally believe Notre Dame over Ohio State. That's a good point.
Yeah,
I like that. I think we should have had him coming from Notre Dame because he looks. Go. I mean, he's basically Brady Quinn. Who are we talking about? Where he's Brady Quinn? I just realized that. Like that's the same player. You did all this in college, but because they never, they always give the excuse of like, oh, it was an injury. Like, nah, maybe
Boise State.
Maybe he couldn't read defense. Nobody would have known who Boise State was.
I mean, yeah.
But maybe it's always like, hurt my knee. Like, maybe he couldn't read a defense. Maybe he couldn't recognize cover 2. Maybe he couldn't see a blitz coming. Like, maybe you weren't good. Because honestly, through this movie, he's really not a great quarterback.
That's another glaring thing that stood out to me in this movie, and we'll get into the player.
So so we'll move on the lineup here. We got Gene Hackman as Jimmy McGinty, the grizzled veteran coach with a soft heart, you know what I mean, with a soft spot. So here's what I'll say about
creative,
Hackman.
Right? Like he's not your typical, like in the 2000s, right? He's not your, hand the ball off to the running back every play, quarterback.
Oh yeah, good point. He put a lot in the quarterback's hands. But he didn't wear a headset. And that doesn't age well.
Didn't even catch that.
No, he wasn't going to wear a headset. And I would assume, like, my question was like, do you think Hackman's like the wardrobe guy came up? It's like, here's your headset, sir. And he's like, nah,
I'm not wearing that.
Nah, crap. I'm not wearing a headset. I'm wearing this hat. So he plays like an old.
It's like Vince Lombardi style.
Yeah. And I ask you this. Does young football fans have any concept of an old man on the sideline wearing a 3-piece suit and a hat? Like, it's got to seem like an alien to them.
Well, it's not alien, I would say, like to my generation, but like here I am 30 years old now, and I don't feel it or almost 32. Like I don't feel it, by the way, but it's just cold hard facts. I don't know if like maybe people in their 20s would really understand.
I don't think it makes any sense to them whatsoever.
Yeah, like your Bear Bryants, your Vince Lombardi, like they're just pictures.
Tom Landry. I mean, this guy's patterned after Tom Landry, like
100%.
Yeah. So he did a pretty good job. But then I would ask you this. Do you think Gene Hackman's ever watched a football game? Because nothing felt comfortable coming out of his mouth when he's calling plays and talking to his players.
Well, the thing that helps him in this movie is like this is the age of like where head coaches are more like just motivational, kicky in the butt coaches, right? Like there's no way this style of coach translates today. Like Sean McVay is not anywhere close to this guy. Like he's probably like 20 years.
I don't know. Hey, what's our guy down in Dallas is probably as close as you're going to get to like, what do you even, I just got it. Who this is really is, this is 1995 Barry Switzer. Okay. Like he's just there. I got some questions too.
So they go, the sweater and
they go on strike. Why did you have to fire your coach when you went on strike?
I
because
thought so.
the
I'm
real
under the
80s.
impression that he was fired before the strike stuff even
Well, it's
happened.
a little
He had
confusing.
been yeah, like, I think it is a little ambiguous as to when he was fired. All we know is that he and the owner have a previous working
Oh, no.
relationship, right?
Well, no, I mean, they fired their coach right when they go on strike, so you bring
Oh,
in a
yes, I
why did you
understand.
need to hire a coach when you went on strike? Because
What
actually
was the union like back then, Jeff?
I
Because,
don't
like,
understand
there's a
it.
whole lot to that too. It's like, it's not just the head coach, but apparently, like, cheerleaders are
Cheerleaders.
walking out, like and further down the movie, like, I know that we don't necessarily wanna do this chronologically, so I'll just put this out there
Yeah, go
now.
ahead.
There's a scene that happens later to where it's like, "Is Falco still gonna be the quarterback on this team?" In my head, I'm like, you only have one quarterback on your roster? Like, you don't wanna just in case, like,
Yeah,
the starter
you
gets
don't have
hurt, you
to.
don't want Falco there?
Which famously their the replacement starting quarterback got hurt, and they brought in another replacement for him in their 3rd game, and that's the famous Monday night game, and that
So you're
gentleman,
referencing the '87 Washington
the
team.
actual '87 Washington team, and I don't get this, the coach of the '87 Washington team is a legend in Joe Gibbs. Coaching was not an issue for the '87 Washington, so it really, like, that was the most
That's not
glaring
as spicy, though. That's not Hollywood enough, Jeff,
yeah, it's
right?
true.
Like,
So
you
Hackman,
gotta
I thought
bring in, like, we need to give somebody who can handle a bunch of nobodies and all
I
this stuff.
thought, but I think they probably could, I don't think they had to have Hackman, even though he did a great job. Hackman at that point was coming off. He was at the tail end of just an amazing career, but I thought he kind of played the same character as he did in like Crimson Tide. Like he played more of a soldier, or
Like
leading.
an officer,
Yeah,
right?
he was
Like,
more of an officer. I'm not sure he's ever watched a football game because some of the things he said, I'm like, it
boy,
just
was he
didn't make any sense to me.
motivational though, right? Like, towards the end, like,
Right.
the
Also, he's like the
ending.
Kerry Coombs. He's basically the Sentinel's Kerry Coombs.
Yeah, I mean, you who's the Detroit, head coach right now? What's
Oh,
his name?
Campbell.
Campbell? Yeah, he's Campbell, but not as animated as
I
Campbell,
like
right?
it.
Like,
Oh, so then next on my list is Brooke Langton. This is
yeah,
Annabelle. We'll just say it. She's the love interest. Now, here's what I'll say about this movie in 2000 though. She looked amazing. Like everybody was like, okay, she looks like a cheerleader. It just she's I don't know, like she's charming.
moonlights as a like, she
Oh
daylights as a
yeah, well, I mean,
cheerleader, work in a bar, like,
what's a
she's
better,
just a good American, like, loves
yeah,
football,
just
like, her
tough as nails.
yeah, like, don't need no man or anything like
Yes,
that,
there you
right?
go.
Like, she's,
Well, okay. Did she have to drive like a maniac? What purpose did that serve?
so, Jeff, if we're gonna start pulling on this string,
Okay, let's do this.
one of the biggest
Let's
and you
dig
have a
into Brooke Langton's driving status.
it if we got a segment in the show that's called penalties. I'm gonna go ahead and throw a penalty
You're
now.
throwing a flag. Okay.
I'm gonna
Throwing a
throw a
flag.
flag on the play. I know that movies in the 2000s, like, very much so had to have love interests, like, no matter what.
No
Like,
matter what.
and for the folks watching this live, like, we got this nice, like, cover art for this movie where it's Brooke
Look at
Langston
her.
and
And she's
Keanu
wearing
Reeves, like,
in her
hugging
in her,
each other and
in her cheerleading uniform with the choker. Okay,
yes.
we gotta get into this.
And then we also have Gene Hackman just kinda standing in the background like, "Hey, I'm just kinda happy to be in the photo right now," right? Like, why on earth, Jeff, did there have to be a love interest in this movie at all? Like, was it not interesting enough that there
Well,
was, like, all this conflict and chaos? It just felt like we deviated from a football movie for a little bit into 10 Things I Hate About You, right? Like, that's kind of like almost
yes.
what I started feeling like in this movie. Like, we did and again, I know that, like, almost every other movie in this time had love interest, right?
Yeah.
And again, we talked about how this movie is kind of almost a vehicle for Keanu Reeves to, like,
Yeah.
showcase his abilities to do a lot of things. It's the heartthrob, right? Like, he's a good-looking dude in this movie, but
Yeah.
still, it's like the
He
the
only
the love interest took away so
he
much
could
attention
he
from this
couldn't
movie,
he
man.
couldn't concentrate on football for 3 weeks. Now see, this okay, if they would have went this direction, like, I would totally get a guy off the street. He gets a shot at being on an NFL team, and he sees an NFL cheerleader. I won't lie, NFL cheerleaders are typically attractive women. I don't think I'm overstepping my bounds here.
Yeah,
I
I
can
mean, it's
see
not a
him
bad thing
I
just
can
for
see him being enamored, but then just being like maybe after the season, like, I'll hit you up or something. But to get so involved as to like, she drives him home. He goes to the bar a couple times.
he stands her up because he's not like he doesn't know what he's gonna do with his life, and like she's crying in the bar with the
Yeah.
candles burning down to the to the ends of
Yeah. Why did we need, we definitely did not need,
the
we definitely did not need this romantic date that he stands her up because the truth is she's like, this is the most chaotic thing that's ever happened to an
She
athlete in
doesn't
the
date
in
she doesn't date
she
players anyway, so, like, why like,
uh,
I don't
yeah.
know, like, I just felt like this whole thing was, like,
Yeah. And
a
she
big
was
takeaway from the and she was
she
great, it's not that,
no,
like, she's
no, she was great. I thought she was actually, she didn't play the wet blanket. She was, I mean, I'll just say, like, she was super hot. Like, that's what they were going for there. I mean, in the early 2000s, like,
she
that
might have
was,
been one of the most convincing
yes.
characters in this movie as well, right? Like,
Yeah, you're right. We're being, so she did her part. So, oh no, we'll talk more about this, but that was a
it's
huge
not
misstep,
her,
especially for a
it's
movie
the
that
side
was,
plot,
a
right?
movie's 2 hours long. Like, there was some fat there to trim. That we never really, let's face it. Like,
And then he
do
stands
we
her
think
up,
this,
and then he just shows up and plays football, and she was like, "Oh, okay, we're cool." Like, well,
yeah,
and that's also, like, really cool, like, as a guy, you can be like, "Oh, wow,
yeah.
like, that's a unique twist, like, I wasn't expecting this," right?
Oh,
Like,
actually, she really didn't dwell on it near as
at
much
all,
as
like,
I
she was just
thought.
like, "Boom,
I have
done."
some questions about whether you can have your top off on a Jeep in Maryland in the middle of football season, but that's probably being a little too nitpicky. So,
Probably.
but she was great. She was great.
You know what's crazy
And
is, like
also not necessary.
yeah, she was also, it's cool to see her in this movie in the short hair, like, it was just like it was a wave,
Oh
back in the
yeah,
2000s, like, short hair women, it's like, "Oh,
yeah.
okay, cool, this kinda spunky, she's very pretty." Like, I didn't realize that, like, years later, when the movie The Benchwarmers with, like, Rob Schneider
Yeah.
and David Spade and all those guys came out, that she was actually the reporter in that movie for, like, that local news network that was covering the
Oh
Benchwarmers,
yeah, for no
and
reason whatsoever.
for no reason
Yeah.
whatsoever. That's just a stupid fun movie too, like, that would be another good setting in the screen, I love that movie, but,
Well,
she had long
hey,
hair, so, like, the iconic short hair in this movie,
Benchwarmer is going to be a tough one to get through. I can tell you that.
I love that movie.
But it's aging rapidly. Anyway, so then we got, this is a very pivotal character. We got Orlando Jones, which, again, I'm older, so I remember Orlando Jones from
The 7 Up
Matt,
commercials.
Mad TV. He was on Mad TV. Really,
That's
really good
true.
actor on Mad TV. So he plays Clifford Franklin, the most. Is this the most stereotypical player in the show? The fast, wisecracking, kind of dim-witted wide receiver that can't catch a ball.
Very into himself.
Yeah, it works in a grocery store, flamboyant. Like, this is a character that and at the time I would say, anybody that knows me knows how I feel about these. I don't know if I love this character at the time, but this they really went into the stereotype on, just, this is, what this is. This is the Keyshawn generation of when everybody was just throw me the damn ball, like all
Mhm.
this stuff will start to happen. Uh, I don't, and I can, okay, so I could never make up my mind what they were trying to do with the character, because sometimes he's kind of cool and funny, and then other times he's kind of a punk, and then he never really did really get better at football. He just got
He
stickum.
so he had
He just
no,
got
so
stickum.
in the in one game, I don't think it was the last game for the playoff though, like, he
Mhm.
runs a nice little comeback route and catches a clean ball, like, hits
That's
him in his
fair.
chest and he catches, like, there's a couple plays where it look but
And they gave
to your
Falco all the
credit,
credit for that.
I
They
was
gave
gonna
Falco all
say,
the credit.
and to your point, it's just like, "Oh, okay, cool, he caught a ball, like, let's move on now." Like, the guy who
Yeah.
has feet for hands caught a pass, okay, we don't need to focus on this at all.
Yep, it's fixed. No
One of the most
development.
controversial scenes I would, think
Ooh, I
in
like where you're
this
going here. I know where
one
you're
of the
going
most
here.
controversial scenes in this movie involved him. So, to your point about how polarizing he is, and probably the most famous scene in this movie, he leads it, but in the most
Yes.
one of the most controversial scenes in this movie, he's directly involved.
I
So
agree. Okay, we'll
which door do we want to open on those, you know, or do we
we'll
want to wait?
no, we'll wait on that. We'll wait on
Okay.
that because there's a lot to unpack there. Then you got Jon Favreau, the Jon Favreau, like the Jon
Had no
Favreau
idea who this guy was when I
that
was
is
young watching
running
this movie.
Disney basically right now. We're talking Iron Man Jon Favreau. We're talking Marvel Cinematic Universe Jon Favreau as Danny Bateman, number 56, the classic. Okay, this might be the second most stereotypical player. The classic crazy sacrifice your body white middle linebacker. Like, I'm sorry. And this hasn't aged well either. He's also a cop. So his definition is that he's an over aggressive cop that kind of doesn't know
Yeah.
boundaries. I was watching, I was like, this isn't
If
this
they
is a tough
reshoot
one.
this movie today,
You
like,
can't do this.
no, not at all.
You can't do this. So
Especially with another character that we'll talk
and he
about here.
was so like, I'll just put it out there. I didn't think it worked. I didn't like it. He's too good of an actor. Like, why couldn't they? I've
This
got a
is
bigger.
this
I
is
don't like this. I
basically
didn't like
Bobby
it.
Boucher on
Yes.
cocaine,
But
right?
why did we do that when we've got Falco who is trying to like? So when they cast this movie, they told Falco like, hey, or told Keanu, you know, hey, take this serious. Like you're this and you're this. And then would they tell Favreau you're in a Looney Tunes movie? Like, they're not in the same movie.
Well, think about too, like Favreau is starting to come up and he's doing more, right? But a couple years prior to this, and also too with Miss Langton as well, they were both in Swingers, right? Like this is young Jon Favreau, so like I think that he's kind of like trying to figure out like how far his range is in a movie with this.
Well,
Right?
I can say it's not that far because he didn't. He reeled it in. Like, he's got to look at this and be like, what? Like, that is not me. Because his whole thing is this subtle sarcasm, like this subtle humor.
If you look a few years down the line in Friends, like he's a love interest of Monica,
exactly,
right? Like
and
completely different.
Or fighter. But and here's the thing, like there's a few scenes in this where he's playing like, you know, just like a serious police officer that I bought. Like, I think he could have played this as like just a tough cop that's seen a lot.
No nonsense, right?
Yeah, I think he could have played, but he was almost. I mean, he really didn't even seem intelligent enough to be a Mike linebacker. Like, my gosh, like red means stop, red means stop. Like, come on.
Well, they're also leaning into what the prototypical way to view a NFL athlete was at that time too, right? Like you're remembering, like,
this is not flattering.
22 years in the past when this is also reflecting a football scenario that happened 13 years prior to the 22 years, right? Like, we're thinking like 30, 40 years ago, how were athletes in general looked at, right? Like they're not intelligent, right? Like they're babies for wanting money, but they're also very non-intelligent people. Like,
oh no, this whole movie is not flattering. Like, none of the athletes really come out like with a different understanding for them. I think it's actually unflattering across the board. Like really, except for we'll talk about him here in a couple minutes, except for the tight end. So we had Favreau next. I'm going to go ahead and put these two guys in there. I know this blew me away because I had forgot this, Steven. And one of the first things you see is John Madden calling the game. John Madden and Pat Summerall in this game. And it immediately took me back to my childhood. It made me so happy. And I got to say this, Madden and Summerall gave it 100%. Like, you buy that they're like actually calling the game, that they care about this. Classic John Madden, whatever he did, he was a professional and he was all in. He, you know, we'll give away awards later, but you know, without Madden, it's a totally different movie. And what I do like about this is something that everybody can go back and watch, even if you're a younger generation. This was Madden and Summerall, and this felt like them, and this is how much fun it was to listen to the game. They added so much to this movie. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and they were working for TBS apparently the whole time.
Yeah, I don't remember the TBS career.
Yeah,
John, but he might. Who knows? He might have. But
I mean,
it was wonderful.
Every like in John Madden too, like people need to remember like how good of a sport this guy was, about the criticism about him as a color analyst, right? Like there's a scene in this movie where he's like he's got the pin, right? Like, you get the classic yellow circles and the arrows and all that stuff, and
Oh.
he's got, like, a 30-40-second monologue where he's, like, over-explaining a play.
And that is so factual for anybody that didn't get to watch Madden games. Like him and the telestrator, that is 100% what that's what he did. Sometimes he would draw weird pictures on it. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was so realistic to what he did.
And it's one of those things that, like, it escaped me, right? Like, you almost take, the people who were instrumental in, like, calling plays, right? Like, they're almost, if not more important than the athletes. And I going back and watching this, I forgot that they were in that movie,
Oh,
because of, like, I was more focused on the sports. But, like, as you get older, like, you care about, like, the way that games are broken down, and just
yeah.
going back and be like, "Oh, hey, cool, like, this John Madden," and, with the tragic passing of a couple months ago that we found out, and it was just nice, man, just to see him and hear.
I really did. That was my favorite part was Madden. We'll talk about it later. Definitely my favorite part. Then you got we're gonna call him the kicker, Nigel Gruff. We'll
Yeah,
call him
Reese Ifans, yeah,
Reese Ifans. You said it. He's the kicker.
throw the
This
blame
was
on.
the leg. This is the gambling storyline that he owed people money.
Mhm.
I got to straight up say, like, the actor is a fine actor. Like, I've seen him in other movies.
Well, how about the fact that, like, he almost disappeared from the face of the earth? Like, he was in the Amazing Spider-Man series. He was the lizard. He was the doctor who
Yeah,
played the lizard,
he's
right?
great.
And the only thing that I remember him from prior to that was
The
this. So
replacements.
it just
Yeah.
seems like he just got airdropped from the replacements to being
Yeah.
like this, like, fun-loving, like, crazy Welshman, and now he's just like a scientist who turns himself into a lizard. Like, it was.
I will give credit. I thought that was a very good choice because let's be honest, the other choice would have been really racist. They would have went and got a South American, actor or something like that. They would have made fun. He would have had some stupid accent. They
Mhm.
would have made fun of him. So I give credit that they could have went really, really dark on this. But I like the character. He's hilarious. The actor himself is hilarious. Like
Yeah.
everybody remembers, like I'm wiry.
Wiry.
And that lasted. The
Ole, ole, ole,
Yeah,
ole.
all that stuff. So the character worked, but it also they spent a little too much time on it. It was a little too important. I'll get into a major penalty
You know
later
what it
about that.
reminds me of? It
Go ahead.
reminds me of what the new Mortal Kombat movie did with Kano. Like, it feels like Ifans is, like, to that level in this movie, right? Like, whereas, like, we gotta lean on his, like, the fact that he speaks different, that he's,
Yeah,
he's, crude language, like, shows,
yeah.
like, exposes himself, like, all this other stuff. Like, it almost kinda
Oh,
reminds me of, like,
okay.
how
So
Kano. Yeah.
there's a lot of penalties for how they. Okay, we'll get into that later because it's not acceptable how they treated the females in this movie
2000s
across
were a
the
wild
board.
time, man. Like, I
2000s was
recently
rough.
saw, like an old football, like, promotional commercial that had Terrell Owens in a locker room at his time in Philadelphia with, like,
Hmm.
a blonde lady in a
Hmm.
towel, like, waiting there and, like, having, like, very, upfront conversations, and it was, like,
Yeah,
something that was just on TV
yeah.
advertising a game.
Yeah,
Wild
that's
times, man.
the locker room stuff did not age well. So, we got him. So we got this is an icky one here. We got, Michael Jace, who
Yeah.
played Earl Wilkinson, AKA Ray Smith, number 42. Maybe I got the wrong guy. Was that not the running back?
No, that you're correct. That's the safety, right? Or the cornerback, however you watch them.
But Michael Jace, I don't wanna get this wrong. Is he the gentleman that went to jail for real later on?
I believe so. I believe so.
I don't
Yeah,
wanna get that wrong and disparage his name because it's not a great story.
I'll look it up while we're talking real.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. I'll move on to the next one. You look that up because I do not want to get this wrong because we're going to talk about someone murdering their wife, and that is not cool.
Yeah.
So we have David Denman as Brian Murphy, the tight end. I actually thought this was the best character in the show outside of Keanu. He's the deaf tight end, which I thought was really cool. You may not remember there was a deaf player that played for the Broncos back in it was either late 90s or early 2000s, and it was a big deal, and it was cool. And I actually thought this is one of the I thought this character makes more sense now than any of them.
Yeah.
I loved it. you know,
Well, you
Nate,
said his name wrong too. His name is Roy from The Office, right?
it's Roy from The Office. If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, I thought he did a great job. He looked the part. He looked really good in it. He looked like a young tight end. I thought of course they made fun of the deaf, but I'll be honest with you, a bunch like you're in the military, Steven, you get
Sure.
a bunch of guys in a locker room. You're going to make jokes about, the other guy. I don't think they went too far.
Nah,
Um,
I mean,
as far as his teammates,
the
the
antagonist in this movie
oh no,
leaned
no, that
into it, right?
yeah, no, that wasn't cool at all. But that's what you're going to do that. You're going to when you need a villain. We'll talk about the
Yeah.
villain later, but I really liked him. I thought he did a great job. He winds up being the hero of the movie. So,
And I
great,
was
great
able to
character.
get that information on Michael Jace. Yeah, so Jace was arrested by the Los Angeles Police Department on the evening of May 19th, 2014, on
Yeah.
domestic violence report and, regarding his wife's death. So,
Just
yeah.
a terrible story. So it's
Yeah.
but you can't talk about this movie without the irony of they went and got him out of prison to play football, and in real life he actually winds up going to prison for a 40-year sentence for a
And then
terrible
you
crime.
got the whole dynamic, even in 2000, right? Like, it's crazy that, like, a lot of the same things throughout history keep repeating themselves. You had the whole opposing forces of, Bateman and Wilkinson as well, right? Like,
Yeah.
just got out of jail and the cop, they don't like each other for a little
Oh
bit.
yeah, it
But
was.
ultimately they end up becoming friends, so there's a little
Yeah.
bit of
So that's how it's going to work out.
yeah.
We're
It's like
everything's good
football
now.
fixes everything, man. Like, I mean,
Wow, there you go. You got deep because that's the underlying story here is that everybody's like, no, no, just keep playing football, everything will go away.
yeah.
That's what the NFL does. That's kind of their thing. So that's the biggest cast, which was a lot of fun. So we'll talk about before we'll kind of go through everything here. So let's go to how do you want to do? You want to do biggest plays? You want to kind of go through the movie? You tell me.
Let's do biggest plays. I like how
Okay,
you
let's do
got it
biggest
set
plays.
up. Let's do biggest plays. And I got a couple like you sent me notes for the people who don't get the benefit of seeing everything that
Yeah.
happens behind the scenes. Like there's there's one more that I want to throw my hat in there
Oh yeah.
in the ring.
So when I say biggest plays, what we're talking about, everybody, is basically the funnest scenes of the movie.
Yeah.
So we're going to call it the biggest plays on here. So you go ahead and you go first. You just spit one out, and then we'll break it down.
So I'll give you the one that wasn't in your outline that you sent me, and that was the fear scene in the locker room. And
Oh yes.
so I think, and at this point, like the team has come together. Gene Hackman has successfully been rehired to this football team, and apparently he has just been, watching people run down, shoplifters at grocery stores. He's been keeping up with, police officers' careers. He's been watching Shane Falco scrub barnacles and
Yeah.
throw
Why
footballs
is the coach? Why
underwater.
is the coach keeping up with players who like literally aren't even on minor league teams or anything? It makes no sense to me.
He's been
That is the
watching
biggest.
Welshmen getting gambling problems.
Yeah.
He's followed this deaf guy around. Like he's
Yeah.
he has a database of prisoners who might be good at football. Maybe
And
he
he
borrowed
couldn't wait
that.
to spit it out. He couldn't wait to spit it out like, "Oh, I've got a whole What was he gonna do if he didn't become a coach? How long was he gonna string this out? How long was he gonna follow?
And they moved right past that too. He's like, "Oh, hey, here's 3 pieces of
And
paper.
the owners
These guys down." Yeah.
how does the owner not go, "Well, that's weird."
Well, he waits to do that until the owner's like, "Yeah, you can have full control of your team." It's like, "Sweet, go get the grocery clerk,"
Sweet, I
like
got this dossier of people who aren't anywhere near the sport right now. I
Yep.
know exactly where Falco's houseboat is.
Like, think about
This
how
doesn't make any sense.
like
I've got a kicker who's never kicked a field goal.
think
I've been
about
just
just like
waiting.
how eclectic this coach is, right? Like he's recruiting bouncers, he's recruiting former sumo wrestlers, he's recruiting people with gambling problems. Like he's got like the most eclectic like networking of anyone that I've ever met in my life. And
Is McGinney
just
a sociopath?
I have
Is he
no
some
idea.
sort of like how does he even get the information? And who wait, so for him to have all this information from all around the world, does he have a team of people that are helping him that are scouting
What
random
was
dudes?
scouting like in 2000, right, Jeff? Like you need to help me out with this more. I was only 10. I didn't pay attention to the scouting scene, but like anybody had a chance at playing football is what it looked
Apparently.
Like all the world was waiting for, and it's funny because we can relate this to what we're seeing in sports now with COVID, and like that's another kind of like inner working of the movie at its time and what happened in 87 with now is like apparently it takes more than just one team picketing for the rest of us to get our opportunity to live out our dreams, right? Like
I
hope
guess.
is run wild now, and we know several players have like held off, have not played, have been sick and needed replacements, and I'm still here talking about setting the
Yeah.
screen with you.
Nobody's been like, uh,
How
yeah, like,
far am I down Gene Hackman's list to get?
yeah. So he's like, nah, there's this podcaster in Central Ohio, construction worker by day, podcaster by night.
He's going
I
to be a
still think
great
he's got,
offensive coordinator.
I think he's got something left in him. No, it's a great point. Like honestly, I don't know where JT Barrett is right now. And he was the best quarterback in Ohio State history, and he only left 3 years ago. I have no idea where he's at on the planet. Gene Hackman's tuned in.
He's got his ear to the ground.
That is without. If
they just completely moved past
we're
that.
gonna
That
throw
was
a
like a
penalty on that.
3-minute scene.
We're gonna throw a penalty on that, and that's like one of those like false start, too many men on the field, screwed up a punt return. Like that's just a
this dude's not wearing a helmet. Like what's going on right now?
And it didn't help us like to have him in the grocery store doing that. Like I don't know how that helped. Like you couldn't just be like like have him like he's playing softball. I don't know. Like he's on a minor league softball team. He's playing lacrosse. Something.
Like his whole purpose at this job is to like either scrub the floor or run down shop.
Oh yeah, and of course we had to make the shoplifter black in 2000. Like it just had to be. Like
well, at least
I'm just saying
Orlando was able to run him down too, right? Like it wasn't as bad, I guess, as what it could have been.
But let's make him steal a Twinkie. Like we'll lean into the stereotype, but not like all the way in. I don't know. Anyway, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot about like what's McGinney doing? Like maybe like if you just got fired by the NFL, like maybe you should be recruiting, I don't know, college players or like NFL players like on practice squads or
so what was going was in 2000, if memory serves me correctly, like there was like NFL Europe going on at that time too, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely. Yeah.
Around that same time. So like
the Waffle League.
Yeah, or XFL, I think was
I don't care. The lingerie league would have made more sense if they would have went, hey, you know, some of these like
CFL, like
yeah, you don't start with the Canadian Football League. It's like, actually during that time, the New York Giants actually went and bought a minor league team, and that's who played for the New York Giants was a minor league football.
They don't even like it would be one thing too, just to have like all these different occupations that you bring in, but at least like touch on the fact that like they have some experience with football.
Yeah, you don't bring it. The only college. Well, no, they brought in Roy's college.
Yeah.
Tight end. Anyway, I'm sorry. You want to talk about the fear scene?
Yeah, so the fear scene, now that so the team has successfully been brought together. They are embarrassed because we know as sports lovers that you need time to build chemistry. They haven't done that yet, and McGinty does a great job to add some sort of realism to this scene, to be like, it's completely unfair for me to expect you guys to come together in 4 weeks. That's the amount of time that we got, right? And so we got to approach this at a different way. Let's level with each other. Let's talk about what we fear. And then, of course, Orlando Jones's character is like, I'm afraid of spiders. And then everyone talks about being afraid of them.
That was pretty funny because that would actually realistically happen with a bunch of young like dudes in a room. I thought this was actually one of the more realistic scenes because that's exactly what would happen. Because my kid would do that. Like my kid's, he's 25 years old. Like, what are you scared of? He'd be like,
snakes, man. I don't like snakes.
And then everybody like, oh, me too. I really like that. And the coach is
like, if we were doing a, see you Sunday, and we did like a biggest fears, like that would be like an hour-long podcast.
Exactly. It would just get out of control.
Yeah, it would be similar to this, but the quarterback, the team leader, the guy that McGinty is wanting him to be, Shane Falco, voices up, and he talks about quicksand, and Leonard Jones is like, yeah, man, quicksand's scary, and they're like, no, this is like a metaphor. And then Keanu Reeves gets deep on us, and it hits heavy, and everyone is just like quiet and like, yeah, man, this is real. Like our opportunity to be anything after this is done. Well, like they're NFL players at this very moment who understand that like in a couple weeks they're gonna go back to like their normal lives. And that realism there too, like even Orlando Jones, like I gotta go back to the marketplace, which is crazy. Like you get an opportunity to play NFL football and like the next, like there's not another step in between
Right.
there and like the marketplace, right?
And
But
the truth is, most of these guys didn't get a job in the NFL.
yep.
This was their last thing. Yeah, I like that too. I really thought it was a good job. I thought they wanted it to be more impactful. I thought, like, I think they wanted this speech to be played on jumbotrons all across the country, but I still thought it was good.
Yeah.
And I think as far as like the realism side of it, it made a lot of sense because that is athletes' biggest fear is not playing. Like no, there's
Mhm.
no bigger fear than just not being able to play your sport. So I thought they really did a
And
good
all the
job.
steps that happen in between there too,
Yeah.
right? Like where you mess up on a play and then like you get told like you got to just move past it, right? Like if you miss 99 shots, you still got to shoot
Yeah.
the 100, right? So like and then you're afraid and then
Yeah,
it impacts
exactly.
every other area of your game and then next thing you know like you're suffocating, like you can't move, you can't breathe on the field and the game just
Yeah.
swallows you up. And that was like, whoa, okay,
Uh,
like
so
that's an actual real sports moment in that
so
movie.
I'll just put this question out there now. I think this is a perfect time. I was going to wait on it. Uh, as this movie as a whole, this scene is one of the few that like I was like, okay, I see what they were going for there. So here's a question I had for you. Could this movie have been a good quote unquote serious movie? Like if they'd have really, really dug in and made a drama about this 3 weeks in the NFL and got rid of all the slapstick stuff and did that, is there a better movie in there somewhere?
I think so, and I think that the cast has shown that, right? Like
Yeah. I
these
think the
guys
same cast could make that movie.
exactly, right? Like we were just talking about with Ifans, right? Like he went on to play a
Mhm.
really like relatable, you feel bad for him,
Yeah.
down on his luck amputee doctor, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
serious role. We've seen Keanu Reeves in serious stuff. We've seen Fabro in serious stuff.
Yeah.
Like
I think
I
Keanu was there for a different movie. I really think he was there for that movie that we're talking about, and
mhm,
Hackman too. I think if you got Keanu and Hackman on board, and then you get this cast, which is really good,
mhm,
you can be funny and not be silly.
yeah.
I know it sounds like I'm banging on the movie, but I think that looking back with the talent they had, I
Very
think.
early 2000s, man.
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's
no, it's a total product of its generation. But I
mhm.
think that wow, this could have been Friday Night Lights
Yeah,
type of
remember
movie.
like, Remember the
Remember the
Titans
Titans?
almost,
Yeah,
like, it could be up there, like, with a Rudy type,
I
um,
do. I think that was in there somewhere.
I agree.
And I see those scenes and I'm like, "Ugh," and there's a few times to where I'm like, they're making 2 different movies.
Yeah,
Like you said, they made The Waterboy and they made, Remember the Titans, and it didn't they combined them for some reason. It's almost like they filmed 2 movies and meshed them or whatever, but I
mhm,
just think there was a better movie there to be made. To say that, I will say another biggest play I had, the recruiting montage right after
mhm,
coach has completely irrational, database of not never was players. They do
yep,
the recruiting montage. So we see Orlando Jones, we see the getting the guy out of prison scene. We see the SWAT team, Bateman on the SWAT team, all these
yep,
things. I thought I'm always here for a montage. The music in this movie was really, really good. The sound, it's
yeah.
actually a great soundtrack.
Sting
Uh,
snuck his way into that movie
oh
too, right?
man,
Like
the Sting song at the end, I'm like, I'm in. Like
yeah,
I'm all in. I would love that so much. That's why I said the tail end of this movie is a different movie, and it was really, really good. So I
mhm.
thought the recruiting montage was cool. It was fun. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite scene. I got my favorite scene coming up, but I thought it was cool.
This is gonna be everyone's favorite, like, it's the iconic
We
scene.
know that everyone's favorite scene.
It's the iconic scene in this movie is
Let's talk
the
about it. Let's talk
yeah.
about it.
So, and here's the thing too, it like extends it's not only just a great like memory of this movie, but like the idea of this scene happens in several other places, right? So, you know, the first loss of the season, right, with these new replaced like the scabs is what they're referred to in
And
this
another
movie.
thing that was fun, 87. I don't even want to say that anymore. I will say 87 Washington didn't lose one of those games. I don't. That was a weird twist too, but
You got a Hollywooder, right?
Hollywood it
Like
up. But you
and
couldn't have the scene you're getting ready to talk about without it. So that's fair.
Correct. Yeah. So like down on their luck, like we shouldn't even be here. Sentinel's team is chilling at, I'm assuming, some local bar. And then who comes in but the guys who are, picketing and rallying against, the spoiled millionaires come in and ruin everybody's fun, right? And come into the scene. And Martell, who is the should be starting quarterback for the Sentinels right now, comes in, and of course he and Falco are just like opposing forces throughout this movie. They get into this bar fight after Martell picks on Denman's character Murphy for being deaf, and Falco
terrible scene, like, and in a good way. Like they got you as mad as you could be when he's picking on somebody for their hearing
disability.
Like, man, you're just like, let's talk about Martell for a second.
Sure.
Because he is the key to the scene. He's a creep. So we haven't talked about it much, but he is the actual, NFL starting quarterback for Washington. He's implied
he's getting paid $8 million as a starting quarterback, and that's expensive, Jeff. That's expensive.
He's the best in the league. The best quarterback in the league is getting paid $8 million. He's a total dweeb. He has these.
He's playing for Washington for some reason. He's the best quarterback.
Yeah. Well, Jay, shout out. That year they did win the Super Bowl.
Obviously a little lighthearted.
But no, he was like back then. He's probably comparable like Danny White or Troy Aikman or somebody like that. Sure. That's who you would have in your mind. But he's just he is the catalyst to all this stuff. He's just unlikable. His face wear is unlikable. His haircut's unlikable. Like he does everything right.
Hair. He's got he's got a smug face. He's got very punchable face.
Yeah, just a great catalyst. Like Martell did his job. Like he knew exactly what he was supposed to be doing, and it worked. So he comes in.
So we get to this bar fight, right?
Yeah,
and the scabs are going up against the strike team, right? Yeah. Like if I can refer to them as a strike force, the strike force is going up against the scabs, and they get in this big fight. And meanwhile, while this is all going on, our guy, the grocery clerk, Orlando Jones from the 7-Up commercials, is hiding behind a jukebox.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
This character's terrible. Why is he like now he's a coward?
He's so like pivotal when it matters the most in this movie, right? Like he's important right now because again, this is one of the most iconic scenes
it is
in this movie. So he's hiding behind a jukebox after playing Aretha Franklin's I Will Survive. The strike force comes in, fights the scabs. He's hiding and doesn't want to get involved. Fast forward, of course, they all just end up in jail, right? Professional athletes getting to fight at bars, ending up in jail. It's breaking ground here, right? Like this never happens in real life. The entire team is in one jail cell, hanging out, and they're talking about, man, that was
just
a
quick correction, just so everybody doesn't add it. Gloria Gaynor is I Will Survive.
Excuse me, Gloria Gaynor. Franklin, yeah.
No, it's fine. I just want to say, and I'm here for a ragtag bar fight, a fun bar fight in a movie. It's my favorite thing in the world. Heads in the juke,
sliding across the entire bar, right?
Across the bar, heads hitting over the back of the chairs, like all that stuff. I'm here for a bar fight in a movie. It's
starting running back. Cochran is like a very religious person. He uses a quote from the Bible to support him. Fighting somebody.
Yeah, there's another character, a pretty good character, pretty good actor, looked the part, and he just kind of dropped in, but they never really never really leaned into it. But I like the most
important skill player in this movie. If we're being
he had a great 3 games.
Yeah, ran the ball, caught the ball, blocked. He's very big, fast. Everything in a 2000s running back that you would have wanted. You got Cochran, right?
Yeah. Hey, Jamal Lewis. He was the Jamal Lewis of their team.
We'll get to that. But so anyway, like they're in jail, and Orlando, like everyone's talking about, like, yeah, man, that was a good fight, wasn't it? And then Orlando Jones like, yeah, man, that was crazy. And then everyone's like, dude, you didn't even do nothing. Like in the midst of everything, everyone had a chance to like peek over and be like, everybody look at, look at our guy over there hiding behind the jukebox. And then of course he plays into the beginning lyrics of I Will Survive.
Let's also remember everything Orlando Jones does in this is a stereotype. Like the voices, like it was so rude. Like he has got to hate this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's
Because
just
he's
like
doing the classic, like, no, man, like the bad speech and everything. And Orlando Jones is not like that at all in real life. And to be fair, most NFL receivers aren't like that in real life. Like most of them are like very like they're intelligent, coherent, like
mhm.
men, and then just to portray them like anyway,
It's just a
really
product of its
bothered me.
time. Like there was a time, Jeff, where I had blonde hair at the top of my hair during the boy band era, right? Like I'm
Okay.
not proud of it,
Okay.
but it's just something that happened, right? So
Wait,
we
I'm
we
so
can move
happy
past
about
it.
that.
Penalty. First one, Steven, you
Now
said.
we're starting to understand. Starting to understand a little more,
Hey
Steven.
man, it was a thing to do at the time, right? So anyway, Orlando Jones' character is leaning into the beginning songs of I Will Survive, and because they're saying like, dude, you were hiding behind the jukebox because you were scared. And he goes, yeah, at first I can admit I was afraid. As a matter of fact, I was
Yeah,
petrified. and
that
and
was
Keanu
great.
Reeves is like, you were petrified? It's like, yeah, I kept thinking I would never live without you by my side, right? And then they start rolling into the song.
Orlando, like Franklin saved their season, didn't he?
Yeah,
Like Franklin saved the season right there.
it was a morale thing,
And
right?
they do the great line dance.
And of course, Bateman is dancing with his hands in his pockets because he's too cool for school.
Yeah,
Like, it was fun, and
it was
the
fun. No, it's a great scene. I'm stepping on it, but it was really a fun
and
scene.
Gruff is rubbing his nipples.
He's just
Theoretically
insane.
speaking,
He was just on 100 this whole
he's
movie.
he's hip thrusting the prison walls. Like he's all over. Like, this
Yeah,
dude is just he's the dog with the red thing hanging out right
yeah.
during this entire movie. But it's fun. Everyone's doing the lion dance, and best part of this entire scene, Jeff, is when Coach I'm sorry, Gene Hackman's
McGinney, McGinney.
Coach McGinney comes down, and everyone stops because they see Coach coming
Yeah.
down. And meanwhile, Murphy, because he's deaf, he has no idea that everybody else is done. He's still just like line dancing away during that time. They're just like, dude, stop,
Shout
stop.
out to the electric slide.
Yeah, shout out to Electric Slide. Yep. And yeah, so one of the most iconic sports
It is
moments
great.
in a
It really
movie
is.
ever, and they go on and do it several times.
Yeah, no, it was a fun scene. There's a perfect song for it. Like I said, they spent the money on the soundtrack in this, and it paid off right there. It really is good. I like the bar fight. I like the jail scene. Coach comes in. He's like, I'm just glad Martell got his ass kicked. Like everything works. It's and it brings the movie together. I mean, that's
For
what you
sure.
remember from this movie. It's one of those like I would say the producers, the directors, filmographers, everybody when it was done was like, yes, we nailed it. We got
That's
here.
what like 40 I'm pretty sure like $45 million of the budget went into that scene because they nailed that part. Like
It's everything about it's great. It really was good. It really was good. So the only one I have left, and this is an iconic, like I don't know, few minutes. It's fun. It's crazy. So you have they're playing Dallas, which first of all I should have looked it up. Dallas's coach in this movie is on fire. Like he does the best of any of the coaches.
don't you think that Sean Payton, like when you watch that
A
like
little
that
bit,
scene,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he
Or
reminds me
McVay,
of Sean Payton.
Peyton McVay, like he's just on fire. He looks the part. He's yelling. I just loved it. So, what we have here is the former or current, I guess they're not former, also exotic dancer cheerleader crew that they had put together is
Who also
distracting.
had their own recruiting montage, by the way.
Oh yeah, shout out to that. Well, yeah, that
Very
is a
like
good
Drop
scene.
Dead Gorgeous-y. Like the way that they
Yeah,
did that reminded me of Drop Dead Gorgeous. And for
it
anyone who
was fun.
doesn't know what I'm referring to, that's
Yeah.
that's a fun early 2000s movie with
So,
Kirsten Dunst.
so this is just where the cheerleaders like get they just I don't know how
Their
to say it. They just
background rings true. Like they're
yes.
recruited to be cheerleaders, and they are
Yeah,
formerly
they use their skills.
strippers, right? Like
They're very talented women, and they use their talents to distract Dallas and help get the ball back for the Sentinels. But that is a big scene. Like it's a funny scene. Like
felt like it was way
wait a
longer
minute,
than
I
it
got a
needed
quote
to
here.
be.
Hold on, I got a quote from the Dallas coach that sums it up. Where are we at here?
Can you just get them to stop shaking their asses for 2
He
minutes?
says at 69 minutes in, he says he stopped
Nice.
them from shaking their ass for 2 minutes.
And at 69 minutes, like how perfect is that?
Oh, right. I know. I
Nice,
when I
right?
paused it, I went, "You got to be kidding me!" But just that was a fun moment. Oh no, let's just throw that in there. The for some reason,
Way
all the
too
cheer
long, man. Way too long
for-
of a scene in the
it
movie. I'm
was
sorry. I
it
was
like
like, "Okay, this is funny," and then it started getting uncomfortable. Like,
how
I'm
many
watching this movie.
unqualified women did we need to dance before the girls come in, and then they're like, the two professional dancers come in. And she goes, "Okay, you guys are hired. I don't even need to see you dance." Wait a minute. We just watched 15 women dance who weren't eligible to be cheerleaders, and now these two don't have to dance. And then she goes, "Hey, if you got any friends, tell them." And that's all we see. And the next thing you know, we got a cheerleading crew.
Well,
Like, wait a
clearly, it
minute.
was based on the way that they physically looked compared
Yeah,
to the
it's
other one.
terrible. It is absolutely terrible. But
I can't
now
speak
to
to
be
how
fair,
cheerleading teams really work, but I mean,
I would say it goes something like that. I would
I
say
have
this
no
is pretty
idea.
realistic of how they um but anyway, we still don't know why the cheerleaders quit because they went on strike. I have zero clue. The head cheerleader, I guess that's what we're going to call her, stays. She says she only makes $50 a game.
Yeah.
Well, I don't get it. Like,
She just loves football, man. Like, this very clear throughout the movie. Like, and what if you love football, like Jeff,
that's right.
if I got to be on the field watching a
Yep,
game,
you're
I
right.
might be a male cheerleader. I'm just saying, like,
You're right.
if I had the
But
body, the looks,
just a
the
weird
talent.
montage, and they just kept the fake laugh and her covering her face with like it really just drug on. And it was like, okay, there's 5 minutes we could have took out, which goes back to your point. Like if we just take her out of the movie, that's pretty much the movie.
Or just a
So
love interest. Like, she could be like just like she could be like a cool cheerleader who's just kind of
yeah.
like has
So
like a conversation with them or something.
but here's the thing though. So you have to be like, there has to be, a meeting. You're sitting around, the producers, director, writers, everybody are talking about this movie. And somebody's like, something's missing. And one of the people in the meeting had to speak up and go, "I think we need stripper cheerleaders." And they're like, "That's it." They're like, "What should
Here,
they
here.
wear?" They're like, "What should they wear? Chokers." What? What is happening? Like, you want to talk about playing to your
Very
audience.
early 2000s, man.
Oh
Very
my
early
gosh.
2000s. Like,
I'm like,
you gotta think about, like, where America was at this moment in time. Like,
oh,
this is when, like, WWF, yes, it used to be WWF,
oh,
was
you're
going
yeah,
crazy. This is like the MTV,
it
Beavis
is.
and Butthead era. It's like South Park, like, all these things, like,
Oh,
Howard Stern, like,
yep. You're right.
everything in America is
It was at the apex of like
just attitude.
nothing matters except for male white gaze. That's it. Like nothing mattered at that point. And it's true. Like it's not the only movie like that. Like my goodness.
No.
Like if anything, they toned it back because I can't imagine like if this is rated R, I can't imagine what kind of movie we got. We
Oh,
got
bro. I think it
Porky's
was
on a football
flirting with
field.
that line, like, some of
I'd
the
say
language.
there's a version out there. I bet there's a version out there.
Yeah,
But I
whatever's
also
on
like,
the
but
clippings
just
on the
all the
floor right now.
stereotypes. Like, okay, wait, every cheerleader's not trying to get with a player. They might just be doing their job. Every wide receiver is not your other choice can't be a grocery store. Like, no, there's all kinds of things you could do. Like you could go into
Yeah.
broadcasting, maybe work at a bank. Nope, you got to be in a grocery store. Every quarterback is not a big sissy, prima donna. Like it just the stereotypes are just off the charts in this movie. That's why again, the tight
There
end.
like you pointed out, like, there's a serious movie to be had in there, but, like, also being able to appreciate it for what it is, you
Oh
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's just there's some. That's why I said I give it credit because they could have
for
been
sure.
they could have stepped over bounds, and they if you edit this down 20 minutes, like you've got a really good movie here.
Mhm.
So we that's our greatest scenes or whatever. So we'll go through some. We've already asked a lot of these questions, which
For
is
sure.
cool. But like, here's my biggest question: Is Shane Falco actually the most successful Ohio State quarterback in the NFL? Because he
What's
is.
his competition, Jeff?
I
What
don't know. Like he had a better. I mean, he helped that team get to the playoffs. He won 2 out of 3 games. I mean, he did better than Craig Krenzel, Joe Germain, um, Hoyne. Like just the list goes on. Sleester went to jail. Like it like
Justin
Shane
Fields is your shining beacon of hope right now,
as
and
of now, Justin.
he didn't have a good
No, it
season
didn't have a
for
great season.
Chicago.
No, it's just
Yeah, so
amazing. Barrett's not on a team. Shane
yeah.
Falco might be the best Iowa State NFL quarterback ever.
Prior turned to a wide receiver, so like he
Oh,
had
that's fair.
he had a
That's
couple
fair.
he had a season or two where he was like really good, but out of position from what he
Yeah,
came into the
yeah,
NFL
yeah.
as.
As a
So
quarterback, he was, yeah. Like I think he had a winner. Like
I have
nothing
no idea
crazy.
what his record is as a starting
I
NFL
still wish
quarterback.
Johnny Utah would have got a shot. I wish they had the medical treatment for ACLs back in the day because I think Johnny Utah had a career in there somewhere. I
I
mean,
got a question
you
for
saw his
you,
speed in
Jeff,
Point
after this.
Break. He's
Yeah.
fearless. You saw his leadership. Like he had Utah had everything it took to be a quarterback.
He's everything that Baker Mayfield wants to be. But I have a question for you.
Baker Mayfield wants to be Johnny Utah so bad.
Yes, he does.
There is no doubt in my mind that Baker Mayfield's favorite movie is Point Break. There is absolutely zero doubt in my mind. No, he might. You know what? Here's the problem. Mayfield thinks he's Brody. That's the problem
Okay.
with Baker Mayfield. He thinks he's Brody. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I can see you being Johnny Utah." He's like, "What? No, I'm Brody." That's the problem.
He's a better Martell than he is a Falco, though, right now.
Oh.
So I have a question for you.
Okay, I like questions.
I'm sorry. It's going to lead into the redraft. Can we redraft these dudes?
You ready to redraft?
Let's redraft.
We can redraft. Let's do it. Oh wait, one thing. I want to do one thing first.
Okay.
I got something I want to do, and I love doing this for sports movies. I like breaking down the plays on screen and if it was real life. So here's a play late in the game. It's a second game, and this is when the leg comes in to win the game. So let's break this down. There's 55 seconds left on the clock. The Sentinels are kicking off, so they gotta kick an onside kick and get the ball back. So they kick off, they recover the onside kick. The very next play, they kick a field goal and with no time left on the clock to win the game. How long does an onside kick take? 55 seconds in football is an eternity.
Well, there was a longer onside kick later in this movie.
Oh, I know.
That didn't last that long. But yeah, it was very
We'll
interesting.
do both these plays.
Okay, so if we're going to do both these plays, the second onside kick, Falco is on the field on an onside kick as the starting quarterback, which let's do this too if we're talking about how realistic
I know where you're going here.
Orlando Jones apparently is the fastest man alive. He just can't catch a football.
Right.
Why on earth didn't they use him on special teams? Like Orlando Jones is Devin Hester. Like if we're being real, like if we're going to recast the player, like Orlando Jones is Devin Hester. He's the fastest man. Apparently he's the fastest grocery store clerk in the world. And he gets a chance to be like this number one receiver, but they don't use him on special teams at all. But they use Falco as the starting quarterback is used on special teams.
That is so
not
crazy.
just holding a snap for a kick either, but like onside kick recoveries. Like Falco's out there
Falco's on hands.
Danny Bateman from ruining the game because he wants to like superhero this play and win the game.
But to be fair, Bateman made the right decision. He had 55 seconds. He had plenty of time. No, this is another penalty flag. John Madden says they got to get the onside kick, then they got to call a timeout. No, you don't. Like change of possession's an automatic timeout. Clock does not keep running. And
then they do call the timeout, but the timeout was called for a different reason other than just stopping the clock.
Yeah.
All right, what the heck are we gonna do now? Right,
yeah,
like setting a play up.
But you don't have to do that. I couldn't believe that Madden let that go. Let that go by. But he had to have caught it and been like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to say it at this point. You people are nuts. But I'm saying you got 55 seconds left. There's a lot of ways to win a game. Like, what was crazy?
And we don't know how many timeouts there are either. Like, was that their last timeout? Like, we don't know.
No stats. They give us no stats through the game. We get whatever. And this is what it was like watching football in like the 80s and 90s. Like, you got whatever the announcers told you. Like, it wasn't a constant barrage of stats. But I can't stand it when games do that. Oh, my God. That was crazy. We'll talk about the last play later because I really liked it, actually. But I do shout out to quarterbacks holding the ball for kickers. Do you know why that stopped?
Why is that?
Tony Romo.
Oh yeah, the butt fumble, huh?
No, well, it wasn't the butt fumble,
not the butt fumble.
The fumble snap. Yeah, it stopped because I believe he might have got hurt too, but Tony Romo is what stopped that. And that's when it went to all punters. Because it was just too distracting. If people don't remember, it was always the backup quarterback who held for the kickers. And then when your starting quarterback get hurt, that made your backup still holding kicks, but he was also the starting quarterback. Like that was that was how you did it. Like until Romo screwed it up one playoff, and it's been nothing but punters ever since, or somebody else, but it's typically a punter. So I just that's something I noticed when I was watching the show.
Not for sure.
So we got the jail scene. We just obviously the time management by the Sentinels, not great.
Not using the fastest grocery store clerk in the world on special teams drove me nuts. I texted you as I was watching the movie. It's like, why did they not like have him returning kicks or something?
So yeah, so we'll do the redraft here. I got one more question for you.
Sure.
What current player can you see being a boat scraper, and he's back in the NFL in 3 years? Because I got one answer.
Okay. Just because I don't like him, Baker Mayfield.
Oh, I can see him. He's living on the banks of the Lake Erie up in Cleveland, scraping boats. I think it's Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, like, that's probably the more appropriate.
Like I just totally can see him like, nah, man. He's down in like Mississippi.
It's funny you say that.
He's down on the Gulf, and he's just like, nah, I've been chilling in his houseboat.
Finds like this old football of his underwater while he's scuba diving.
Oh, he would totally play with it. First of all, okay, we got to go. This doesn't make it. Here's another penalty. Falco was on his houseboat. He left his houseboat. He took his dinghy boat to another boat and scraped the bottom and found his Sugar Bowl trophy. Why would that trophy? In what world is that trophy there? Does that person that lived on that boat? But it was his. It said Shane Falco on it.
Did he just like in a drunken stupor, just like decide to pull a Tom Brady and try to
throw
from one boat to the other? Like
he went to one of his clients' boats and threw it off the edge. That was so puzzling. They never addressed it. Like they never brought it up. They never said anything about it.
You didn't have to explain movie. Like there weren't podcasts picking movies apart in 2000s, right? So,
oh man,
could you imagine
that scene? I thought all these years I thought it was under his boat, which made sense.
I thought so as well. Yeah,
it wasn't. It was a client's boat. I'm like, why is it under somebody else's boat? Anyway, so oh my gosh. So we'll get to the redraft.
All right.
Sorry, I thought you texted me. We'll start with Falco. I'll let you go first because I think I already stepped on it. But
yeah, so at the beginning of the movie, right, like watching number 16, the long hair.
I'm sorry, Steven. We should clarify this category. We call this the redraft. What this is if we made this movie, but we took actual players to be the actors.
Yes.
This isn't who does this player or this actor remind me of. This is if we had to make a movie with players to be the actors. I want to clarify that.
Yeah. So at first I was thinking like with the long hair, wearing number 16, he's, California kid, not a bad looking dude, very laid back. I was thinking Jared Goff might be like the better Falco. But as the movie continued and like, at the end of the movie, right, where he comes back, right, like, so just to kind of explain like what else happens in this movie, the starting guys who were picketing away from being on the field because they wanted more money, apparently they give in. An agreement is made, and then Martell comes back to take his starting quarterback spot. Falco leaves, everyone's sad. And then,
and somehow Falco is watching the first half of the Monday Night Football game from his boat.
And makes it through security. He's like, makes it through traffic, security.
You know what my first thought was, and I'm being serious, pre 9/11. Like that could happen pre 9/11. I'm being totally serious.
That's a very good
point. You cannot do that now.
No, not at all. But anyway, Falco comes back in the second half, and like, not to spoil the movie, but we're spoiling the movie. They win the game because Falco comes back, right? So I'm thinking like, what other quarterbacks like weren't the starting guy, get inserted into a role and win big games, right? Like, is Nick Foles not the better? Is Nick Foles not the better Shane Falco in this movie?
Nick Foles, you're exactly right. That's perfect for Foles. Like, I got this. And he's not perfect. He's not a good quarterback, but yet he's the right quarterback at the time. Because you look
Mhm.
back, Falco did not have he never had a good game. He had like
One of
three.
his one of his scoring plays were a tipped off of his
Oh
lineman
yeah,
or
he had trick plays. He had
yep,
all kinds. Like he never looked good as a quarterback. His throwing percent, it really leaned on the run. They won every game. It was like 14-7. Like they weren't high scoring games. It's a different NFL.
yeah,
I had Gardner Minshew because I could
that
just see.
works too.
No, I like golf. I could just see Minshew or not golf, but Foles. I could just see Minshew playing this part literally. Like right now,
Mhm.
if you ask him, like, "Hey, we got this role for you," I think Minshew does it. And he
You
looks
can
the
keep your
part.
mustache, yeah, keep
Yeah,
the
yeah,
mustache
and
all
he's
the time.
not like, if you see him in a grocery store, I don't think you automatically think he's, oh my god, he must be a pro
That's an
athlete.
NFL
But yet
player,
he's, but he's also like totally is an NFL player. So I thought Minshew would be great for this.
for
I'll go
sure.
next. So for Coach McGinney, I got Bruce Arians. Just kind of old. We don't really know how much he does. Uh, Players seem to really like him. He says the right thing, has cool press conferences. I'm not sure he's the X's and O's guys. What people think. He kind of leans on his quarterback, leans really heavy on his quarterback.
Yep.
Doesn't seem to care a lot. Like, and I mean in a like a rational way, like it's not the
Mhm.
end of the world kind of thing.
There's always another game, yeah,
Yes, yes. So I think Arians is kind of what puts me in mind of that. He's not, this guy's not an up and comer. He's not trying to prove anything. He's like,
yep,
nah, I'll do it. Whatever. I'm in. Because I think, it kind of reminds me how he was in Arizona,
yeah.
Tampa Bay. Like in Arizona, he has Warner. Just leans on Warner. He's like, let's go. Let's see what happens, things like that. So he's kind of a lovable, older coach. Yeah, I got Bruce Arians from McGinney.
If I'm not confined to just picking a white dude, right, like,
No, absolutely not.
I would probably lean Mike Tomlin. I think that he would be a good Coach McGinty, right? Like,
I think Tomlin fights Falco.
you think so?
I think he punches Falco.
Roethlisberger has gotten away
Good
with
point.
a lot,
Ooh.
not even previous to this year, but, like, in years past, like, has
Oh,
gotten
I
away
want to
with
change my
a
mind. I
lot.
want to put Roethlisberger in as the kicker, as the sexually harassing creep. Okay,
Oh,
Roethlisberger is my
okay.
kicker now.
Okay.
No, I like
Alright.
Tomlin, and I
I
want
think
to,
so
and I'm
not
here to
very
watch.
analytically driven, like, he
That's
sticks to
true.
his gut, like,
You're
what he
right. Tomlin
sees is
may not need a headset. Tomlin may not need a headset to coach. That's a good
yeah.
point. Yeah, I could see him giving speeches, a lot of speeches.
He is very motivational, like,
Yeah,
he cares, he's very passionate.
a lot of speeches. He's
I
always laying it down like, if you don't do this, you're going to regret it forever, kind of thing. Like
very
it's not
unflappable with the
it's
media.
it's now or never. It's now or never.
Mhm.
Oh, I like it. I'll buy Tomlin, and I want to see
Okay.
him in a movie. Like
Yeah, for sure.
and
When
you
I
get
first
me.
saw Tomlin as a coach, like, when I was, going
Oh,
back to
l-
2000, it wasn't that much later, right, that he was the head coach.
that
I
was real
thought he was
close.
an injured player on the sideline, like, he's
Yeah,
built dude, you know?
yeah. Oh, I'm a big Tomlin fan, and
Yeah.
give me him and Minshew in a movie. I'm in.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
so I went to Franklin. I went to Sean Jackson.
Yeah.
And only not only the speed similarities, but I just as an act, I think Deshaun Jackson will be hilarious in a movie because he's just kind of such a nutcase, and not in a negative way, not in a
Sure.
real nutcase way. Just he's kind of just off the chain a little bit. OBJ would be another one that
Mhm.
would be good for that, but I put Deshaun Jackson because I'm like he'll look the part, even though Deshaun Jackson's a great receiver. Like
Sure.
he's not going to drop the ball, but I think he could be funny. So I went with Deshaun Jackson.
I'm thinking Devin Hester because he can relate to being a guy with speed without hands, and maybe even Tavon Austin might be another good option there to
Oh,
be
that might be
to
too close to home for Tavon Austin.
just saying, just saying.
Shout out to Tavon Austin. Oh, yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. So when I had to do Martell because he's our
Mhm.
antagonist of the movie. I went Tom Brady. I don't know anybody else. I think Tom Brady can
I got
play
one for you.
I think Tom Brady can play the complete, like, irritating, like, I think he would be great
You're
at this
gonna
role.
love mine,
I
Jeff.
think he would be great at this role. So I went Tom Brady for Martell. I know it's obvious, but I don't know who I can think of that could be more instigating than Tom Brady.
Oh, come on. I'm gonna say this guy, and
Oh, I'm gonna love it. I can't
you're
wait.
gonna be like, "Yep." How about Aaron Rodgers? Like, how about the speech
That
that
was on my list.
How about the speech that that Martell gave Falco when he came back to take his locker room spot? Is that
Yeah.
the same
That's
speech that
Aaron Rodgers might have
Aaron
wrote that.
Like, he might have said that to Love whenever he got
That's
drafted.
a great point.
Right? Like, could you not picture Aaron Rodgers in your head like, "Hey, man, like, this isn't fair to you, like, to think that, like, someday you could eventually, like, take my spot, like, you
Oh,
can like."
no, you win.
Is
You
that
win.
not Aaron
Because
Rodgers
Brady
to
wouldn't do that. Brady wouldn't
No,
do
not
that.
I mean,
No, he would insinuate it.
Jimmy Garoppolo was supposed to be getting.
But I think Brady would insinuate. I think Rodgers might
Oh, how
say
about
it.
Garoppolo for Flacco?
Oh, man, he's good looking enough to play Flacco, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, our surprisingly relevant cheerleaders would love them some Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh, I like that.
With similar dancing backgrounds, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so no, I like that. I like where we went with that. And then I got one more here. We
Okay.
did Murphy, which is the tight end. I went Mark Andrews because of play style. Because I honestly I don't know what Mark Andrews' voice sounds like. I
Me
don't know if
either.
I've ever heard the man talk, but like when I watched the route, and we'll go through the last play here in a second. He just kind of reminded me of that type of receiver, like split him out wide, a lot of motion out of him, trying to read the defense and all that. So I got Mark Andrews as Murphy. It's just, you know, I don't know, it just kind of set right with me, just playing style wise.
Yeah, similarly, I went with Zach Ertz because I don't know if I ever saw Murphy throw a single block in this game, and a
Oh, snap.
very fluid
Good point.
route runner, right? Like, and again, I don't know, I have no idea what Zach Ertz sounds like.
Was Murphy ahead of his time? I mean,
Yeah,
was he was the modern tight end if you really think about it.
did not throw a single block
Well, think about it.
that I can remember.
Okay, let's look at this. The writers from Baltimore, the movie's filmed in Baltimore. Who was the tight end in Baltimore in 2000? Shannon Sharp. So
Okay.
that what your mind is, at that point, like, no, tight ends are more than just,
Maybe
because it is
maybe
odd to have
Jason Witten,
Jay Witten
or
wasn't even around yet.
Dallas Clark,
Yeah, Clark would be close to being around. Yeah.
yeah,
But think about that. Murphy is a modern tight end.
Keith
Like he
Miller,
ages well. It aged well.
yeah,
Aged well. Because 5 years before this, it would make no sense to have a tight end as your best receiver. Like it made no sense whatsoever.
no,
I
for
like
sure.
that. So speaking of tight ends, let's talk about the last play.
Okay.
The climax of the movie, last play. Everything's on the line. This was originally a Monday Night Football game that, Washington actually beat Dallas and it helped them get to the playoffs. Doug Williams had I'd say it's the greatest game in NFL history for everything that it meant. Shout out to Doug Williams. So I liked it. They're under center, which is crazy. Like nobody goes under center anymore, especially like in the last play of the game. I thought it looked great. I thought the filming, like the views in this movie, the lighting, I thought they really did look like professional football. We were talking about the tight end being ahead of his time. Basically like everybody, Gronk or whatever, great song. But I just love the play. Like they send a tight end in motion. They get him open on the post route, I think it was, and wins the game. I thought it looked good. Like it's a believable last play. If you're going to take away the weird fumbled snap touchdown takeaway play.
Yeah, for sure. It's I don't know, like the play at the end, like there was very few shotgun plays ran, and I know that when we were talking offline, that you had pointed that out. There were a couple times where they did run shotgun, but it is weird, right? Like to see the way that this game had broke down, the route that they ended up going with, right? And the fact that there was also before the last play, like Falco like saves this kick and saves Gruff's life and runs this beautiful
Well, let's talk about this. The last play before this is when the kicker is scared to kick because he's supposed to not make the kick because of gambling debts. And he confesses it to Falco, like why they're before the play. So Falco pulls the snap, scrambles in for like a 40-yard touchdown. That was terrible. Like the whole gambling storyline, all that was terrible. Like all Falco would have been like, oh no, okay, let's run an actual play. Like there's so many things he could have done different.
Spike the ball, like something. Call a timeout.
Something.
Something.
Like what a weird time to confess your gambling debts.
Yeah, I don't know
Really.
if there's ever a good time in the middle of a game to be like, "Hey, if I don't do this, I could probably die." You know,
Yeah.
so
Let me tell
there's
you
that.
something about athletes. They would be like, "Oh yeah, we don't care. Like we'll figure it out. Like make the
Yeah,
kick and we'll figure it out." So, yeah, that's a penalty right there. Like I didn't like that storyline. That entire storyline was dumb.
no, for sure. The gambling thing could have definitely like been a non-event, much like the love interest thing.
You want to take a pause now, Steven?
No, I'm good. I'm good. We're good.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's kind of yeah. We didn't go step by step through the movie. Everybody's seen the movie. Everybody, you know, you can go watch it. Actually, I watched it on HBO Max, which was really cool. It was totally
It's on
available. Even
Peacock too. Yeah.
yeah, Peacock. I've got it on DVD. It's all good. So here's another one. Like the ending was great. You know, I liked the last play. I liked how it looked. I liked the music. I like the
Mm-hmm.
monologue over that Hackman gives over, the ending after everything's going. And a comment I made to you was like, if you haven't hugged anybody while you're wearing shoulder pads, like you might not get the ending to this movie or
For
whatever
sure.
sport. If you haven't hugged anybody while you're still in your uniform after a game, it's hard to explain like what that means. They really, really caught that at the end of this movie. I loved it. It was great. So where does this movie rank or stand? Where's its place in sports movie history? I mean, there's hundreds
There's
of really good ones. Like where's its spot?
So I think the way that you talked about the fact that you haven't seen it in such a long time, um, I think that kind of sets the scene like fairly well, or
Mm,
sets the tone for like where it's remembered. I think it's easily forgotten, but I think it has a few moments that are iconic that like
yeah,
you talk with your friends and be like, "Hey, do you remember the replacements?" Like the "I will survive" scene is going to be one of the first things that you remember, and then like somebody's going to remember something else, and then you're slowly going to the nostalgia is going to come back to you, and
yeah,
you're going to remember that you actually do love this movie. It's just not as like it's everyone's got a Mount Rushmore for everything nowadays, right? With social media, right?
oh
Like
yeah,
this is not going to be on
no,
your Mount Rushmore of sports movies. It's not gonna have a like meaningful impact on your life or like set like it's not gonna inspire you necessarily either. But it's just like a fun, kind of punky fun movie about sports. It's got a little bit of everything in there for you as a fan. And I think, like, if you got, like, your tier 1 movies, it might be like a tier 2 or tier 3, but it's just so fun and so different from almost everything else that are out there as a sports movie that it's gonna have, like, its own little niche following of people that are just like me, right? That are just like, "I freaking love this movie." Like, I appreciate it for what it is. It's nothing more than what it is, but what it is still awesome.
yeah. I think I feel the same way. I put it up there with like Necessary Roughness and a few of those. It's like, oh, this is fun. I remember being young and this was a good time.
Like, Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell, right? Like,
Yes, yes.
it's
But
there with that.
the other thing, I think the major flaw is I don't know if this movie knew what it was, and I kind of take away from that. Like I think they thought they made a different movie than they did, and in editing or whatever got caught up. And I think if they would have been aware of what they were making, like we talked about the Longest Yard or
Mhm.
Necessary Roughness, if they would have been more self aware, you could have had a better movie and leaned into. They got a little confused. It's kind of a confusing movie, but it is fun. It was better than I thought it was going to be. And like you said, there's 4 or 5 scenes that I consider really, really good. So, yeah, I think you're right. It's a we'll call it a yeah, I think it's a tier 2.
Yeah,
I think it's the next
good
level down.
B-level sports movie,
Yeah,
and some B-level
and it's a
movies,
bit
like, have a cult following, and,
yeah, and it's a bit
it's
of a
cool
time
to be that
capsule.
way.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
bit of a time capsule of the early 2000s in sports, and it, it tells a lot of stories and stuff. So, yeah, I
Like,
think it's definitely
Pulp Fiction probably won't be, like, a lot of people's, like, favorite movie of all time, but a lot of people love Pulp Fiction because it
Yeah.
is what it is,
It's
right?
actually
Like,
my favorite movie of all time.
well, there you go. Like
We will
Jeff,
be
if you're
doing that on Setting the Screen someday.
very well. But
Yeah.
anyway, so like you got people who like that, or you
Yeah.
have people who are huge Lord of the Ring fans, right? And like there are people who that's not their style of
Yeah.
movie, but the people that love them, they know everything about it. Like that's how I am with The Replacements. Like it's like my sports movie cult following film.
And most importantly, this is a movie that if you stumble across it halfway or at any part in the movie, you might sit and watch 15 minutes of it and enjoy it. That's the important thing a sports movie has to do is it can grab you at any moment. So
That's true.
overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoy the show. The world premiere, so to speak, of Setting the Screen. There's
Yep.
more to come. We got there's just endless supply of movies that we can do. It'll be years before we're out of movies, so I'm pretty excited about it. So, Steven, I want to thank you for being my partner on the first one. I can't think of somebody better. I'm Jeff from Jeff Needs Sports. That's Steven from. Well, Steven, what are you doing now, real quick?
Yeah.
Like
So
it's more than just Steven.
yeah, so you can follow me if you want to on Twitter at Stephen G Hoops. I have deviated away from breaking the game. Like we've had some stuff come up, and still love NBA, still love basketball, but that project is kind of off to the side. But I'm pouring myself into NBA draft content, right? Like, and you may see, well, if why are you doing NBA draft if you also did an NBA? Two different worlds, like, and
Oh yeah.
highly it's very, very different.
Do you
But
have any grocery store clerks on
I
your
don't have any grocery
are you
store clerks,
are you
former cops, like, I don't
are
have
you
a sumo wrestler on
you're not
here.
following anybody on a random, Greensboro, North Carolina SWAT
You know,
team?
my lawnmower mows my yard in, like, 10 minutes, and that foot like, he's got good technique when he turns, like, he might be able like, his post work is on point based on what I'm seeing when he cuts my grass, but anyway, um, but I don't have a yard worker anyway. But anyway, you can follow me, at Stephen G Hoops on Twitter. You can follow Draft Capital is the name of the, draft show that I run, and, I had Rafael Barlow, who is really big on international scouting. Just had him on earlier today, Jeff, before we recorded this show, and had a lot of other great guests like Chad Ford, Matt Babcock. I got plenty more huge guests lined up. So if you're into the NBA, you want to know more about the future players of the NBA, you can follow me at Draft Capital there, and I'll turn you on some players that you may never have heard of, and you know, people worth monitoring, and you can kind of learn more about that aspect of it too.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You help guys like me who don't follow the lawn care workers of America figure figure out who to look for in the upcoming draft. So that's it, everybody. Just setting the screen. That's Steven. I'm Jeff. We got more to come. And everybody go check out offtheballnetwork.substack.com now for everything else that the guys are doing. Have a great week, and we'll see you later. Remember,
Yep, much love, y'all.
chicks dig scars.